Hello, and welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto, attorney at law in the state of Michigan. I've been practicing law now for 24 years in the fields of consumer protection and lemon law. I'm a frequent writer for Jalopnik's subblog, The Garage, and from time to time I contribute to Opposite Lock. Today we're going to talk about how to avoid the 3 worst Craigslist scams. Nowadays, you get phone calls at your office, if you're an attorney like me, about people who've been ripped off on Craigslist, and it can be either a buyer or a seller. Okay, so if you're posting to sell something on Craigslist, people will try to rip you off. And if you're trying to buy something on Craigslist, people will try to rip you off. So these are the 3 worst Craigslist scams that I encounter all the time. I read about them in the newspapers, I see them on the news, and I have people calling my office all the time after the fact. And like many of the things I talk about in this show, you want to avoid these things happening to you in the first place. If you avoid it in the first place, it's much less painful than if you get hurt and try to figure out how to cure yourself after the fact. So the first, number 1 problem that I've encountered with people getting ripped off on the internet with Craigslist is they'll buy a car sight unseen. This will also happen on eBay. People nowadays trust things they see on the internet, and I don't know why. When I was younger, we used to go car shopping from classified ads in the newspaper. And you might want to go talk to your grandparents about what newspapers were. But the classified ads in the newspaper or the Trading Times, the Auto Trader, or whatever you guys have in your hometown, there was a little classified ad, a little description with a couple words. Later on, they had photographs. You'd call that number, you'd find out some information that way, and if it sounded tempting, you'd then drive over and look at the car, test drive it, and consider buying it. Now, I know you're saying, gee, Grandpa, nowadays we've got the internet. The internet is no different. You've got a little description and a photograph. And guess what? With the internet nowadays, it's extremely easy to fake photographs. I can find any photograph of any car I want, post it on Craigslist or post it on eBay and say, I own that car, do you want to buy it? Okay? And if you buy that car sight unseen, the car might not even exist. And I have spoken to people, I've represented people who paid money for cars that were never delivered at all. The other problem, of course, with the sight unseen car is they might ship you a car that's different than what they described to you, okay? They might send you a car that's been wrecked after you saw the pre-wreck photographs. They might send you the wrong car. You might have seen photographs of a beautiful mint condition car, and they might send you one that's wrecked or in just bad condition, and it turns out that those are photographs of the correct make and model, but it wasn't the exact same car. So the only way to get around this is, number 1, don't do it. That is, don't buy a car sight unseen and trust that the seller's not only describing the car to you accurately, but is using the proper photographs. And if you really, really want to tempt fate, if you really can't get over this, you're living in Michigan and the car of your dreams is in New Mexico, you've either got to go down there yourself and take a look at it, or find someone who can do it for you that you trust. And I know people who've picked up a phone and just hired someone to go do something like this for them, and they don't know that person. And then, of course, that person's report doesn't actually help them because the car gets shipped and it's wrecked anyways or something else is wrong. Now what are you going to do? You're going to sue the person you picked out of the phone book, or you're going to sue the person who sold it to you who's in New Mexico, which you can do, by the way. But it just might not be worth your time and money and effort to go after them depending on how much money it is, okay? So if you can't get your own eyeballs on the car or someone that you know and trust, you've got to really, really tell yourself that there's a chance this car is not real. The photographs might not be real, the description might not match the car, and so on. So buying a car sight unseen off of Craigslist or off of eBay, that's one of the worst Craigslist scams out there. Don't do it. Avoid it like the plague, as they say. The second most common Craigslist scam involving automobiles is curbstoning. And curbstoning actually is a term that describes 2 or 3 different bad transactions. And a lot of people are doing what's described as curbstoning, and in some states it's illegal, in some states it is not. I've done a specific podcast on nothing but curbstoning, but I've got to include this because quite often a curbstone deal begins with Craigslist. So what happens is a car dealer is trying to sell cars. And if he runs an ad and says, I'm a car dealer and I'm trying to sell this car, he gets a certain kind of response. But if he posts an ad on Craigslist or eBay and he says, I'm just a guy selling a car and here it is parked in front of my house, he will get different and higher quality responses because most people would rather buy a car from an individual than from a car dealer. I argue with people about this all day long, and the internet's one of the biggest, most contentious points that I try to make. People would rather buy a car from an individual, a used car. There's several reasons for that, one of which is I can look at the guy or the gal I'm buying the car from, and I can judge or gauge what kind of car owner they might be. Did this person beat on the car? Did this person race the car? I've had people go, oh, that's not true. Absolutely. Okay, so let's suppose you want to buy a relatively late model sports car, and you go and you find out that the owner is an older gentleman who dresses nice, speaks very, very well, and seems rather calm and sedate. Or you go and it turns out that the guy who's selling the car is 18 years old and he appears to be hopped up on crystal meth while you're talking to him. And, there might be a chance that he's a little harder on the car than the other person is. So you want to be able to tell these things, and you can do that when you're buying from an individual. Another problem I have for people who don't believe this, that you'd rather buy from an individual, is if you don't think there's a difference, then why on earth is the car dealer doing it this way? Why would they pretend to be someone else if they're not gaining an advantage from it? They are gaining an advantage from it. And in some states, this is illegal. Why is it illegal if there's no harm? There's clearly harm, okay? So a car dealer posing as an individual is the first thing you got to be careful of. Number two, car flippers. If you find a person on Craigslist who's selling a car, there's a chance that they might be selling a car a week because they're buying them and flipping them. And car flippers, again, they might not be doing anything wrong with respect to, they just simply found a good deal on a car and they bought it and are selling it to you, okay? That in itself is not necessarily wrong. But in many states, you've got to be licensed to sell used cars if you sell more than 5 or more than 3 or some specific number. Someone who's flipping a lot of cars who's not licensed is breaking the law, number one. But number two, a person who's flipping cars does not know the true history of the car. And so if you ask them, has all the maintenance been done? Has the warranty work been done? Have all the recalls been done? They don't know. So if they tell you that it's all been done, they're lying to you. And if they admit to you, I've got no clue, I bought this thing at an auction yesterday. Well, they're never going to tell you that, okay? Curbstoners don't do that. Curbstoners pretend it's their daily driver. Oh, this car is great, it's run for a great length of time. They'll tell you these things, and those things are lies. Anytime a seller is lying to you, you're running a bigger risk of being ripped off. I don't care what anybody says. So one of the ways you can find out if you're being curbstoned is if you talk to them and say, by the way, I want to see the title. And as I've told you before, anytime you're inspecting a car, ask to inspect the title before you commit to anything or even talk about price. Because the title could contain something like rebuilt salvage, or it could contain a problem with the mileage. It can contain all kinds of information that will cause you to rethink the purchase. So say I want to see the title. That title's got to match the person who's handing it to you. Unless, of course, they say, well, I'm selling this for my mother's right inside, okay? But if they say, oh, by the way, the title's in the name of the previous owner, and I didn't get it titled in my own name, they're doing what's called title skipping. Some states it's legal, some states it's not legal, okay? But again, that should be a red flag to you that something's going on, because if the person's got the title and it's not titled to them, there's two things. Number one, they're doing this to evade taxes. And anytime you're helping somebody break the law, in my mind, you might want to back off on that a little bit. But number two, I've had people call me who say, I bought a car from a guy. The guy said, I've got the title signed over from the previous owner, and I'm just going to assign it to you, and then you go and title it in your name, okay? The problem with that transaction is the state looks at that as if you're buying the car from the original owner, and the person in the middle doesn't exist. I have represented people and spoken to other people who had problems where something was wrong with the title, and the DMV or the Secretary of State's office said, you need to go get this corrected from the person you bought the car from. Ha 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 ha. Because the person you bought the car from is not the person who's on the title. So now you've got to go find the person that they bought the car from. Good luck with that, because that person could be dead, and I've had people call me, and that's the instance. The person could be in a different state, or the person could be just gone. It's extremely hard to find people these days, okay? Even with modern technology and the internet. And then trust me, I've tried to track down witnesses and so on, and some people are very hard to locate. And by the way, when you go and find that person and say, hey, I need to fix this title, they're going to go, who are you? How did you get this car? I sold it to the other guy. They might not cooperate. You can't force that other person to cooperate with you because you have no contractual relationship with that person. So a skipped title is almost always something that you should be very, very wary of, because by its very nature, the skipped title does not represent the transaction you were just involved in, okay? So let's suppose you get a receipt from the guy you bought the car from. You now have a receipt from one person and a title from somebody else. So that is almost always something you should be wary of when someone's selling you a car that they don't own, okay? That should be property 101. You don't buy something from somebody who doesn't own it. And the person says, well, I do own it. I've got the title here signed over from the previous owner, but their name's not on the title. So how do you know they own it? Okay, and that's always a problem also. Arguably, you might have this car and you try to title it in your own name. The original owner could report the car stolen. Say, hey, the car got stolen. I lost the title. I have no idea. And now it's your word against somebody else's who you've never met before, and you got to drag the person you bought the car from in, assuming you can find them. And I've also dealt with people who had that problem. They bought the car from somebody who got the title from somebody. They had a problem with the title, and they couldn't find the guy they bought the car from. So problems with car flippers and curbstoners, these are all things you need to be very, very wary of, but they're extremely common on Craigslist. That's one of the problems when you make it, is that anybody can advertise for free, is it brings in all kinds of people, and many of them are scammers. The other big scam on Craigslist in particular is the money order scam. Okay, so this is when you're selling something. You're selling anything, whether it's a car, a piece of furniture, an appliance. Okay, there are actually people out there who will target you when you're selling something. They'll send you an email and say, I'm very interested in what you're selling. In fact, I'm so interested, I'm going to fire money to you right now in the form of a money order or a cashier's check or something that sounds really, really good. And I'll make arrangements to have this thing sent back to me, okay? And I've heard a variety of variations on this, including such as, I'm going to send you money for the thing plus money for shipping. I want you to take that cashier's check to your bank, deposit it, and then take out the money for shipping and call this number and arrange the shipping, and they'll take care of it that way. And of course, the shipping phone number is fake. The person you give the information to simply debits the money as quickly as they can, and guess what? The cashier's check and the money order is never good. It is extremely easy nowadays with laser printers and scanners to actually create counterfeit money orders and cashier's checks. And I can tell you this, that I've actually gotten 3 or 4 of them myself, because one of the most common variations on this scheme is people contact attorneys. I get emails almost every single day from somebody who says, I'm looking for an attorney in your area. I write them back and say, oh, really? And they say, yes. And then they tell me that they've got a case against a local person. They pull somebody out of the phone book. And then a little while later, I get a check in the mail, and it's almost always from Canada, for several $100,000. And it's made out to me. And they say, here's the money. You just keep 1/3 for yourself and send us the rest. Now, if I had a lot of money in my trust account and I took that check and I put it in the trust account and I mailed the money to the other party, what happens, of course, is that check or that money order is no good, but the bank doesn't know it right away. They put the check into their stream of wherever paperwork goes when you cash a check, and a week or 2 later it comes back and says this check is no good, and the bank then reverses everything, including telling me that the entire deposit's no good. So any money I sent to somebody else is long gone. Long gone. And I can't get it back because they're in Nigeria or they're in Venezuela. Who knows? They're in another country. They're probably in a country we have no extradition treaties with, okay? The money's long gone. This happens every single day in America, the money order scam. And it can be that simple or it can be convoluted, such as, something, I have a friend who lives in your neighborhood and I owe him money. So I'm going to send you the cashier's checks. I trust you. Somehow I don't trust my friend. I trust you, so your car is $1,000, but I owe my friend $500. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay him $500 to drive the car to me. So I send you the money, you take the money, deposit it in your account, and then cut my friend a check for $500 and give him the title to the car. So the guy drives off with your car and $500 in cash. That's good money. And of course, a $1,500 money order bounces and your bank reverses everything. And now you're out the car and you're out your money. Happens every single day in America. Right now, it's happening to somebody in America. There's a very, very easy way to avoid this. When someone calls you up and says, I want to buy your thing, I'm sending you a cashier's check, I'm sending you a money order, they're often going to tell you that and make it sound like time is of the essence, okay? But time is never of such an essence that you should avoid common sense. So when someone sends you a check or a money order or a cashier's check or some wacky piece of paper that's allegedly worth money, when you take it to your bank will deposit it as long as it's a decent counterfeit, okay? They don't scour this thing, they just deposit. They've got too much stuff going on. What you do before you go to your bank is call the issuing bank. There's a bank out there whose name is on that check. Call that bank and say, I was just presented with a money order or a cashier's check or a check allegedly drawn by one of your clients. And it has been sent to me in payment of something I'm trying to sell on Craigslist or eBay. Can you please tell me whether or not this check, money order, whatever it is any good? And trust me, they will do this. Because I've had a lot of fun doing this myself, where I get this multi-$100,000 check or money order from Canada. I call up a bank and I say, by the way, is this thing any good? And they laugh at me. They say, of course not, it's no good. I've actually gotten them where the bank's names were misspelled. I've gotten them where there's typographical errors on them. And of course, a lot of times the accounts aren't real. The tracking numbers are incorrect. But all they need to do is get a piece of paper to you that looks like something, and it has a tracking number on it or a routing number, and that'll get it into the stream of paperwork to where it won't get kicked back immediately. And they figured this out years ago. I remember this happening years ago on 60 Minutes or 48 Hours or whatever, where they're talking about different scams where people say, work at home, we'll send you some money to set yourself up, pay yourself your first thing, and then send us back some money. Anytime you find yourself giving something to somebody of value and all you've got is a piece of paper, okay? And this is where this actually causes people to get screwed up, as they go, well, I went to the bank and I cashed it and my bank gave me money. Well, the bank gave you money out of your account, okay? But they put a hold on that check and its funds until it actually clears. So do two things. Call the issuing bank and say, by the way, is this thing real? Is this account real? Is this thing legitimate? And 99 times out of 100, I say, no, it's not. Send it to us or tear it up or mail it to the IRS or whatever, mail it to the FBI or somebody. But they're going to say, no, it's not real. But just in case they say, gee, it sounds real, then when you go to your bank and deposit it, say, by the way, I understand you're going to negotiate part of this today. Can you tell me how long it is until we actually get word back that the thing has actually cleared the other bank? And they're going to tell you, oh, it's like 5 or 10 days. Whatever that time period is, you're going to need to wait that before you send any money back to the buyer and before you ship your car or your refrigerator or whatever it is they want you to ship. Don't do anything until you've gotten confirmation that that thing has actually cleared both banks and is good to go. And there's a time frame they'll give it to you. But like I said, odds are somebody who's in a hell-hot hurry to buy your old Monte Carlo for more than you're asking and is asking you to ship it and pay a shipper some cash over the phone, chances are it's not real. And the bank that is on the check will tell you that almost immediately. So call that bank first, then check with your bank. And if you still think it's worth the risk, go ahead and do it. But this is kind of backwards. You don't want to buy a car sight unseen, like I told you. Sometimes selling something where the buyer is sight unseen is also a problem. Obviously, the person shows up at your house and says, I'm here to buy your vehicle. You can negotiate what form of payment they're going to make. Now, if they whip out an already prepared money order or cashier's check, you're going to want to be careful about that also, because a person could show up and do that. Now, they're less likely to do it face-to-face. I've never heard of anybody doing it face-to-face, but I have to imagine it's possible. So be very, very careful. But those are the 3 worst Craigslist scams out there. That is, you buy the car sight unseen, you get ripped off. You buy the car from somebody who's curbstoning you, you get ripped off. You're trying to sell a car to somebody or selling something to somebody and they buy it with a fake, counterfeit money order or cashier's check, and then you get ripped off. So those are the 3 worst Craigslist scams out there, and that's how to avoid them. Questions or comments, fire them my way, LehtosLaw.com, LEHTOSLAW.com. I'm on Twitter at Steve Lehto, at STEVELEHTO. This show, of course, is on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Thanks for listening and watching. Bye-bye.